2017 when she got certified as a speaker, coach, and trainer. Since 2017, Sylvia has empowered others to create a vision for the life they desire. As a keynote speaker, mastermind facilitator, and empowerment coach, she has guided individuals to the realization that the only barrier standing in their way are their limiting beliefs. That clarity has led many to life-changing experiences and insight in how to work with their own minds to achieve their infinite potential. Help me welcome Sylvia Villalobos Worsham.
Thank you, Lucy, for your kind words. It's such a pleasure to be here amongst friends. I am from the Rio Grande Valley. I made Brownsville my home for many, many years until I moved to Austin in 2013 and gave up my life as I knew it to marry my best friend. The happily ever after is an idea that's been instilled in us since we were young. What they fail to tell you is what happens afterwards. They fail to tell you that Cinderella drove the Prince Charming mad with her obsessive need to clean the castle. Or that Ariel's dad meddled so much in her life that she left her Prince Charming and swam back home. Well, as you heard from Lucy, I did meet my Cajun Prince Charming, married him, and have the most beautiful baby girl with him, Vivian. And for a while there, I had found my ever after. But then I decided to leave my corporate job, and I got into unfamiliar territory. It was not something I was comfortable with because I'd never done that before. And at the same time, my husband decided he was going to work 50 to 60 hours a week and start traveling about 2 to 3 weeks out of every month. So it became interesting, let's just put it that way. And so after 5 years, the resentments had built up on both sides. The story I'm about to share with you is a deeply personal one, but it sets the foundation for the title of the talk, which is Lead an Amazing Life with Reflection and Focus. It was a Monday afternoon, and I had just arrived from the valley from visiting my son over summer break. And Donnie and I had had a very heated fight, and I walked out of her home and walked to the park adjacent to our neighborhood, and I sat on a bench. And I remember looking up at the brilliant blue sky and begging God to help me. It was obvious to me that I was choosing to live life my way instead of God's way. On Saturday of the same week, I was meeting with my life group, girlfriends from church, having mimosas in the pools. It was a fun time. After everyone left, however, I broke down sobbing with one of them, and I described what was going on in my marriage to her. And she listened intently, and after a while she said, "I tried this in my marriage, maybe it'll work for you," she said. "Submit to your husband's wants and needs." Submit? I asked her. Submission? Oh, that's going to be tough for me because, well, let me give you a perspective on this. My first marriage vows, when I was standing there at the church, in the Catholic Church, I omitted the word submission from my vows. I mean, I literally omitted it. The second marriage, I wrote my own vows. So for sure it wasn't in those vows. But I remember thinking, okay, stay open, because maybe this is God's way of sending a messenger to you. This is Saturday. On Sunday morning, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up suddenly from my bed. The house was totally quiet, everybody was asleep. And I remember getting a huge prompting to get out of bed and to start reading the Bible. Well, my Bible is the Leadership Bible by John Maxwell. So what John has done in the Bible is he's pulled out all the leadership examples of the Bible and written using the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And I was so intent on going to the book of Jeremiah, but my hand fell on a particular page, and it was one of the lessons that John was talking about, the law of connection. It was a story of Abigail. She is an emotionally intelligent woman, according to John Maxwell, and she is married to a man named Nabal, who's very arrogant and very rich man, who has enraged David. And one of the servants comes to Abigail and explains to her, you know what, your entire family's going to be slaughtered. You need to do something about it. So Abigail, being an extremely emotionally intelligent woman, gathers all the fine things in her house, doesn't tell her husband. She goes to David, and the next line, as I'm reading, reads, under genuine humility, Abigail submits to David and seeks his favor. There's that word again, submit. And I remember in reflection at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling the enormous presence of the Holy Spirit all around me. And I remember asking God, is this what you're commanding me to do? Am I to submit to his wants and needs? And the word yes started to prompt in my thoughts over and over and over again. And followed very closely by the words, you are ready, but he is not. And the reason why that is so key that I heard those words followed by yes was that for months and years before, I'd ask God, why me? Why do I have to change? Because my husband was saying, you need to change this, and this bothers me about you, and you need to change that. And I'm sure some of you in this room that are married know what I'm talking about. When you get into fights with your loved ones, and it's, I don't like it when you do this, and I don't like it when you do that, and I kept asking God, why do I have to change? And his response, because you're emotionally ready and he is not. At that moment, with genuine humility, courage, willingness, and absolute love in my heart, I started this journey of transformation and of self-discovery. So what I did as a coach with the John Maxwell team, they highly encourage us to seek out coaches for ourselves because the mind is very powerful and we all have blind spots. And we don't even realize, we're unaware of a lot of things that we do on a daily basis. So I went out and I had, in that moment of reflection with God and meditation and prayer, I had been researching coaches and this face kept popping up in my mind that morning, and I asked again the question, since I had God's attention and all, is this the person I'm supposed to hire? And right away, yes, that face kept popping in and out, so I hired her, and the first thing we did was to create a compelling vision for the life I wanted. Before this, I was a very negative person. Most people probably didn't know that about me, but I was extremely critical of myself, not very kind to myself at all. I did what everybody else expected me. I lived life through someone else's eyes. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to live life like my daughter lives life, with the wonderment of life all around her. And so the very first thing you see on my vision is the face of a child, and that's why. I wanted joy and love, and I wanted to be the best role model to my kids, and I wanted to be a fun mom like my mom had been. My mom would get on a bike and would start playing with us as kids, and I had lost that. In 20 years, I had lost who I was, and I wanted that again. And in terms of my career, I wanted to empower others. I wanted to validate, motivate, and encourage empowerment through my speaking. Well, I'm doing that today, so obviously the vision's coming true. On the relationship side, I wanted to be a very loving and supportive wife to my husband. I did. That's what I wanted. And so what's even more compelling is not so much your vision, it's also the purpose. What gets you up in the morning, the why? Why are you doing this? Do you want to do it? Is it because it's a desire that you have in your life? Now remember what the word desire means. Do you guys know what the word desire means? Does anybody know? From the Father. D-E means from, and sire means the Father. All the desires are inside of you because God has planted that inside of you. All of the answers that you seek are inside of you. You just have to have the courage and the willingness to step out of your comfort zone and seek it. So my purpose, what's a better purpose, more compelling purpose than I want to stay married? I've met the love of my life. I want to be the best person I can be. I want to have love and happiness in my life. So, of course, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to do what it takes to become that person. Because ultimately you have vision, purpose, and ultimately identity. So, in order for any of us, though, to really understand why certain habits and patterns stand in our way of achieving that life that we want, we must first understand how the mind works. So I know this slide looks a little bit complicated, but I'm going to make it as simple as I can. And if you have any questions throughout this, please ask me, because this talk is for you. I'm going to use the mind that you're currently using to process what I'm explaining to you right now, the conscious mind. The conscious mind has the ability to either accept or reject the idea that an outside source is giving you. I would be that outside source. Or even your imagination. This is where it's stored. This is known as the thinking mind, and it processes about 2,000 bits per second. So you're thinking, oh wow, that's pretty good. Wait till you hear about the subconscious mind. This is where your current level of awareness lies. And it's where you make your choices. Your conscious mind is your thinking mind, okay? Your free will, cognitive IQ. On the other hand, the subconscious mind, wow, this one is the most powerful one of the two. It is processing 4 billion bits per second. Let me say that again, processing 4 billion bits per second. It is the one that is responsible and currently controlling your behavior. You have programmed your subconscious mind to behave in certain ways based on the programming you've given it and based on the core beliefs you have about yourself. This is where memories, programming, feelings, reactions, your past resides in the subconscious mind. It has zero ability to accept and reject ideas that I'm giving to you. It just simply takes in information. But let me explain how that works. When I was a little girl, as you guys know, I have a father who is a surgeon, a retired surgeon, and he was always working hard. We were very blessed to have our mother be at home and take care of us and be the fun one. But as kids, we never understood why Daddy was never home, right? My mom did her best to explain, well, you know, he's your provider. He's trying to provide for our family, but you're little and you don't understand. All you understand is that you have feeling of unworthiness for his love and attention. That's all you know. In my coaching sessions, I found out that I carried the limiting belief of, I am not enough, okay? Now, the way this works is your thoughts and self-talk either align with it. So if it's a negative limiting belief, the thoughts and self-talk that you'll have about it is going to be negative. So the thoughts I would have as a little kid is, I'm second choice to my dad's work. I'm not important enough. He doesn't love me. That's the self-talk and the thoughts that reinforce that limiting belief, okay? And then the feelings are the third part of it. Now you start feeling of unworthiness. And what happens when we feel anything? Do we act on our feelings? Yeah, we do. We react or we act. And that's where your habits and patterns are the issue, because once you act repeatedly and you program the subconscious mind, it is now programmed to give you the circumstances that align with those beliefs. So when my husband, and as I explained to you, started working 50 to 60 hours a week, well, guess what happened? That limiting belief surfaced, and I had no awareness whatsoever. That's the worst part, is you're completely unaware of it. That's how this works. So I want to share with you the power of I am. I want for everyone in this room to please stand up. Stand up. I know you're eating, Daddy. This is the part where you stay seated, okay? Because it takes you a while to stand up, Dad. I want you to give me your best power stance. Can you give me your best power stance? You're meeting with a very important client. I want to see shoulders back. Shoulders back, head up high. You're confident, right? You're going to, hi, Velma. How are you?
Fine, how are you? Fine, and how are you?
Oh, very good. How are you? Can I have Arnold, Feliz, Belinda Herrera, and Kenya Romero please come up to the front for me, please? I know 1, 2, and I know you're up here. I want for each of you to give me your I am statements. I did kind of warn them. I'm not going to do this to them at the... So I'm going to start with Belinda. Belinda, give me your best I am statement.
I am blessed, I am helpful, I am smart, and I am a blessing.
Kenya.
I am confident. I am successful. I am powerful. I am a rock star.
I'm a dedicated husband, dedicated father, and helping people get their American dreams.
And I am a captivating and dynamic speaker. Now you can take a seat now. I want you to continue your lunch. The reason why this is so powerful is for one reason. There are 3 components that you're going to need to change those habits and patterns that are wreaking havoc in your life. Physical expression, self-talk, and focus. Those have to be in alignment with your desires in your life, that vision that you're going to create for your life, that very compelling, beautiful vision that's going to stretch you beyond your imagination, out of your comfort zone. For those certainty seekers out there, there's zero certainty. And that's the joy of life. These were my limiting beliefs on the left, and I now have my daily affirmations. I do tell myself I'm beautiful now. But like I said, self-talk truly, truly matters. Can anyone tell me what a full Ironman consists of? Does anybody know? What? Ironman, the race.
Running, swimming.
Bike, swimming.
But do you know how much? How long of a distance?
It's a marathon.
118 miles, I think.
For what?
Oh.
For the bike. For the bike. But it's actually 112. But so it's a very long race. Okay, a full Ironman consists of a 2.4-mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, and then a 26.2-mile run. Why am I asking this? This gentleman that you see here, Dr. Gills, James P. Gill, he was featured in the book, The Business Boutique by Christy Wright. If the women in this room have not read that book, I highly recommend you do. In it, he talks about self-talk and how it matters. He writes, I've learned to talk to myself rather than listen to myself. When I listen to myself, all I hear is fear, doubt, lies, and failure. But when I talk to myself, I can tell myself anything I want to. I can feed myself good thoughts of hope, confidence, truth, and victory. I can tell myself I can do it. When I learned to talk to myself rather than listen to myself, I realized that there was nothing I couldn't do. Well, let me explain what this guy has done. He has completed a double Ironman in 36 hours. Not once, not twice, 6 times. 6 times. It's amazing what we have the capacity to do. Our capacity is infinite. Our potential is infinite. Yet, we stand in our own ways. Why? Because we have programmed our subconscious mind to do so. It aligns with your core limiting beliefs. So why did I pick the law of reflection and the law of focus? Because when you apply those 2 laws, you can start to understand what those habits are. And reflection and meditation and prayers where I found my way out. I ask the hard questions. But before we can even get to anything else, I want to ask you a couple of questions. When you're talking to yourself and you're having thoughts, from which perspective do you speak from? Now, I want you to look at the list, because I bet some of you in this room are going to think, wow, I actually go from the side of fear. Fear is where the challenges and the hurdles and the difficulties, instead of, this is an opportunity for me to stretch my abilities. This is a possibility for me. I can do this. This is easy. These are blessings. These are blessings in my life. This is an opening. I'm successful. These are lessons I'm learning, not failures. Right? A lot of people focus so much on their failures that they fail to see what's right in front of them. An opportunity to get out of your comfort zone and into your capacity zone. That's the law of the rubber band from John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. So, from the same token, when you think anything, that, of course, leads to feelings. And I've already described how that goes. So, are you operating from a place of love or from a place of fear? Are you operating from a place of abundance or a place of scarcity? One of the things that John talked about in his book, Intentional Living, He discussed how initially in his career when he was a preacher, pastor, he went and interviewed a bunch of pastors that had very successful churches and asked them, to give them the pearls of wisdom. And he started to apply it, and his congregation started to grow. And when other young pastors came to him to ask for advice, he would keep that information to himself. He was operating from the side of fear because scarcity is there instead of abundance. And he writes in Intentional Living what a mistake that was. And how he had learned that lesson early on, because together we can do so much more together. So much more. We can accomplish so much more. And yet, we want to operate out of fear. And I gotta tell you, I operated out of fear for the first part of my life, and asked me if I was happy. Was I fulfilled? So you gotta ask yourself, in any situation you find yourself in, where are you operating from? Where is that fear coming from? Try to dig deep. Try to figure it out. You may be surprised at what you find out. I was very surprised. I didn't realize I had carried over a lot of these beliefs into my romantic relationships. Well, no wonder they failed. Duh. Of course. So one of the things that I've always done, especially when I've gotten mad, because there's a congruency to all of this. There's an accountability piece. There's an intentionality piece. When you want to change and be a better human being, you got to stick with it, right? And it helps to have accountability partners. And our masterminds, how much did I put you guys through last summer? I asked you, stick with it, stick with it. I was your biggest accountability partner. I stuck with it for 10 weeks. And I know that Velma's not going to love me right now when I tell her this.
Okay.
You light up when you sing. Truly light up. I hope you operate from a place of love. That is my hope for you. Gratitude is something that a lot of people use. A lot of the self-help books talk a lot about gratitude. When I've gotten upset at my husband, I go back to the times that he took care of me in the hospital with pulmonary embolism, and then suddenly the anger goes away. I remember how much I love him, and I focus in on that. There are patterns of behavior that we adopt when we have these feelings of unworthiness, right? There are 7 patterns of behavior that my mentor, Roddy Hairston, wrote in his book, Are You Up for the Challenge? When I say my mentor, I don't just take classes from John Maxwell and certified under John Maxwell. I'm also a growth master with Roddy Hairston. Roddy Hairston used to work with Tony Robbins. He was one of the master trainers for Tony Robbins and then went off on his own. And if you have a chance to read his book, Are You Up for the Challenge? I highly, highly recommend it. In that book, he writes about the 7 patterns of behavior. The victim, I think most of us know this one. We blame our circumstances and people for everything, and we lack accountability. The rug dweller. These are the people that love to watch TV because they just don't want to raise his or her standards to wherever they need to be. The certainty seeker. I know I sat here a while before I became a speaker. I sat in my cushy job in sales because, well, I was good at it. I loved it to some degree, but it didn't really fulfill me. This fulfills me now, so I'm glad I got out of that pattern of behavior. The success seeker seeks the next big thing. They go from one thing to the other, because they're so in love with the inception part of any program. My coach, the lady that coached me, she was a success seeker, and she told me about it. She's like, I kept going from one program to the other. I'm sorry, I was having technical difficulties with this projector, so I have to come in and click. The pretender. I think a lot of women fall in this category. I know I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist. So the perfectionist is in this category, and they lack the honesty to admit he or she doesn't feel worthy. The escapist puts their head in the sand and hides from reality. He or she lacks the ability to look at what's happening in their life. And finally, oh my gosh, don't I know a lot of doctors that fall into this category, the stressed achiever. Think status and financial success are the most important things in life. Lacks humility. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I worked with a lot of physicians in my life, but ego has a funny way of rearing its ugly head. And I used to be a person that I used to view the word value as meaning how much money I was bringing into my household. That couldn't be further from the truth. We are valuable in so many ways. Just in our gifts we can provide to the world, and it has zero to do with money. And like Rod E. Harrison states in his book, Are You Up for the Challenge? You're not in charge, he says. Not really. Your true master is your habits, which are controlled by the unconscious mind. Some programs call unconscious, and the John Maxwell team calls it the subconscious. So it's the same thing. You're just not consciously aware of it. So, how do we change that? You see a bunch of pictures of me being extremely happy. After my 45 days of putting myself through replacing all my habits and getting very focused on what I wanted in life, identity is the third piece in change. You become that person. You become that person. So here I am. I used to hate going on roller coasters because I was so afraid of them. On the right lower hand side, I'm there with my son Andres. He was so excited because he finally got me to go on the Aerosmith roller coaster in Disneyland. And I was so excited. I was like a little kid. I was like dragging him along, and I was becoming that person that I always wanted to be, but just lacked the courage to do so. And then you see me on the left-hand side. I know Velma's going to be very upset. Not upset, but just a little jealous, maybe. I got tickets to Hamilton in New York City. So there we are, enjoying Hamilton. And I got my bucket list item that I had put on my vision board of going to the U.S. Open. And there we are at the U.S. Open in September with my husband. Well, he was the one taking the picture. We got to see Djokovic play. He's the one that ended up winning the U.S. Open that year. So. And of course, on the upper right-hand side, I became that mom that my mom had modeled for me for years. That playful mom. My daughter had a Peppa Pig birthday party in December. And you probably can't see me, but I'm wearing a pig snout on my face. And I'm reading stories to the kids. And what's even more interesting about this is that 10 years ago, I couldn't be in the same room with my former husband. Well, it was his weekend with Andres that weekend, and I invited my husband, my former husband, to my home, and I served the man. And he was there, and he couldn't believe what he saw. Someone that was playful and different than the person he had been married to for almost 10 years. Can it happen? Absolutely. It takes a lot of desire. It takes a very compelling purpose to get up every day and to choose to make those choices with your conscious mind, and to learn to work with your subconscious mind so that when those feelings get triggered, you can start asking yourself the hard questions, which leads me to the law of reflection. The law of reflection is something that John Maxwell talks about in his book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, allowing or pausing to allow growth to catch up to you. Well, as you heard at the beginning of this whole journey, I was in a reflection when I was asking God those hard questions. I do something that had been recommended to me many years ago before I even joined the John Maxwell team. I had a very good friend. He's actually taking my picture back there, Humberto Caballero. I reached out to him, and he gave me the advice to read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Julia Cameron is a playwright in Hollywood, and she's written a book that she published many years ago. And in that book, she talks about morning pages. And anyone who's ever worked with me on masterminds know that I have people journal 3 pages. Now, someone like Velma, we understand she's not a morning person. So we call it midnight pages for Velma. For others, like Belinda, who is an early riser like me, we call it morning pages. And what those are is you declutter your mind by writing 3 pages, just whatever's in your head. That way, according to Julia Cameron, you get to hear God's whisper. You get to hear him when he speaks to you. How can you hear him if you're constantly thinking of all the minutiae? How is that possible? Got to declutter. Roddy Harrison, all the major great leadership experts in the world reflect, and they do so by journaling, meditation, or prayer. So what are some of the questions that John says you can ask yourself? These are his questions. And of course, we've been talking about habits. So what is my best and worst habit is one of them. What is my most and least worthwhile emotion? I knew mine, a feeling of unworthiness. So what did I do with that feeling? I let it go. Doesn't serve me. It sabotages me. It sabotages that vision for my life, so I just let it go. What is my biggest asset or liability? What is the most fulfilling to me? For me, it was a career in empowerment of others. Sales was something I did because I needed to put food on the table, and I was good at it. And I wanted to stop being a financial burden to my parents in my career. So I just stuck with it because I was good at it. What don't I know about me yet? Another thing that the Artist Way talks about is having an artist date with yourself every week. What does that mean? Well, you get to take yourself on a date by yourself, no one else is allowed, and you get to do whatever you want. Imagine that. Ah, how nice. 2 hours by myself without having to chase a 4-year-old kid. That's always nice. Or a 13-year-old kid that's always grumpy half the time. So what have I done? I've actually done that. I've taken myself to the movies. I've gone roller skating, which I hadn't done in years. Probably the next thing I'll do is go paint with a twist, all on my own. Because how are you going to know what makes you happy if you don't put yourself out there and start doing things that make you fulfilled and happy? There's an enormous power in pausing. Experience is great, but according to John Maxwell, evaluated experience is the best. Because what happens in reflection when you write about a situation at work that's really bothering you, you're evaluating your responsibility, your accountability. Yes, you might also be talking about what the other person did, but it helps you see the big picture of things. It helps you evaluate your responsibility in it and your accountability in it so that the next time you're faced with that situation, you know how to operate and how to identify those triggers. That's how I have identified my triggers. One of the triggers I had was I would always get in between my husband, Donnie, and my boy every time they fought. I tried to be the hero and I ended up being the schmuck. I always got in the way of things. And in meditation and in reflection, I found that. And so what would happen is when I saw that they were both ready to get it on, I would just step out of the room and start meditating. I got out of the way. Let them figure it out. It's their relationship, not mine. If you're a leader, pausing is vital to success. This is my question, however. I want you to take a good look at this question. Notice the wording on it. Based on your past lessons, current opportunities, and future possibilities, what is the wise choice you can make in your career, your relationships, your mindset, and your health? We got to take care of our bodies so that they can last longer and we can be longer here on earth to celebrate and be joyful with our loved ones. So health and energy is a very important one. So I want you to think about it based on your past lessons, current opportunities, and future possibilities. What is the wise choice? What is the wise choice? Which leads me to the law of focus. This one's a really important one because remember, it's the third component. Physical expression, self-talk, and focus. The law of focus is a universal law. It's also featured in Rod Harrison's book. What you focus on, you find. What you focus on grows. What you focus on seems real. And ultimately, what you focus on, you become. In my past self, I was always focused on the negative. I could find the negative in any situation very quickly, but ask me to find the positive and I struggled. So I started to shift my mindset. I started to do focus exercises, focusing my mind. Meditation is a very good way to focus your mind. Even if it's just 3 minutes at a time, start building up. Do 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, until you can do 15 minutes at a time. 15 minutes at a time. And start using your imagination, because your imagination is your visualization. And that is talking to your subconscious mind. That is telling your subconscious mind how you can work with it. Yes, Kenya?
You said to ask questions, so I'm
Sure.
going to ask you. You're
Okay.
going to start 3 minutes meditating. Like, how did you start? Since you said you started off in a negative, looking at negative, how do you start looking at your positive?
Well, first off, you quiet your mind. You don't allow those thoughts, because if you're ever meditating, the first thing they say is allow the thought to come in and then just push it aside. So that's the first step, right? The second step is there's one focus exercise that Rod talks about in the book, Are You Up for the Challenge? And that is this one. Look outside and notice the pattern of thought. Say you look outside to your garden, for example. Watch the pattern of your thought. Just observe it for 5 minutes. Just let it happen however it's going to happen. And then after 5 minutes, jot it down. Jot down everything you observed. And then do the exercise again. This time, however, you're going to tell your mind, I will focus on the possibilities. So now it's the positive side of things. What are the possibilities? Yes.
For Kenya.
Yes.
In the meditation, I started doing this a few months ago,
Uh-huh.
and there was a tip in a guided meditation that said, your mind is going to wander. That's what minds do. It's
Right.
not about how many times it wanders. It's realizing that it does it, stopping, it says, take a deep breath and slowly bring it back to the breath. And if it wanders 20 times, let it wander and bring it back and just start over.
Steve Jobs talked about it a lot, that his mind would do that too.
Listen to the breathing.
Yeah.
Listen to your breathing. Listen to the mind. And meditate. You can meditate while you're driving.
Yeah, well, one would hope not to do that too often,
Let me tell you.
because that would be scary.
Breathe in and out
Uh-huh.
when you're on a stop sign. And that'll slow you down.
Of course.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are in such a hurry.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. One thing that Rod says to be careful of is to undisciplined thoughts drift to doubts and fears that can stall your life. So undisciplined thoughts, and that's where the meditation comes in, where you start to observe your thoughts and write them down, and then start to make a conscious choice to focus on that vision, because your mind has to have a target, guys. You gotta create a target for it so it knows where it's going. It's gotta have some direction, kind of like a little GPS. It's gotta have that. So to put this into action, you have a worksheet right in front of you. I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It's the tree of your life's results. You have color, you could do whatever you want, but I want you to think of some beliefs that you hold true about yourself and go all the way up. See if you have any thoughts or self-talk that you have. Like, so for example, if you don't even know where to start with your thoughts, because that's the one that you're currently probably thinking of. Or start with your results. I'm not going to tell you how to do this because everybody's different. Every personality is in this room. So I'm going to give you 3 to 5 minutes, and you guys do whatever you want. You could do it you can either have a core belief that stems from love or a core belief that stems from fear, like mine. And I showed you some of my examples, like I'm ugly. That was a core belief. Or I'm not smart enough. You'll know. You know yourself. You're the expert on you. So I already started the time, and maybe a courageous soul will come up and share. Let me take some water. Oh, there's some water. I told you it was going to be interactive. I did promise that. And I knew Daddy wasn't going to be interactive. He's refusing to write because all his beliefs are, I'm amazing. I'm an incredible physician. I know your affirmation, so you probably started there. Come on, Bruno, it's not hard. Come on, man. I want to bring you up, so, start. To think I've known some of you for a long time. But only you know your results in your own life. Are you fulfilled in your career? Are you happy as a person? What do you want to change about yourself? It might help you, it might trigger a response here. Think of your significant other and think of the things that they're always complaining about. You might actually be able to start there. So one of my lovely habits was to interrupt my husband when he spoke. So I identified it as a belief that went back to I'm not smart enough. So I always felt like I wasn't being heard. So I would interrupt, so I made sure he heard me. But bad idea, bad pattern. That's why you have the colorful pencils there, so you guys can have fun with it and make it look as beautiful or as fearful as you want. I see some of you are somewhat done. Is anyone done at all? Oh, come on. Just nobody wants to come up. Arnold, come on up, share with me. What did you share with the audience? One of your beliefs. Oh my gosh, can you read it?
No.
It's your handwriting. Okay.
On the fear side, I have, don't have enough. And on the core belief, on the abundance side, I have explore. That's the first word that comes to my mind.
Okay.
On the self-talk thoughts, I have be aggressive. On the love side, I have come to a place of contribution.
Mm-hmm.
On the feeling side, angry. When I got out of the Air Force years ago, it was very hard for me to be in this industry because a lot of people weren't at the same pace I was, so I got really angry that they couldn't keep up. And it gave me a really bad reputation for a long time. And now I just come from a place of gratitude for having another person help me in a transaction or in anything. As far as habits and beliefs and patterns, from the fear side, it's always wanting to be right. From the love side, it's finding a solution that truly is a win-win for you, for them, and for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I will give you something nice for that response. Let me know which book you want from the John Maxwell team, and I'll get it for you signed by John.
All right.
Okay? What does this number represent? Does anybody know? Can anybody take a guess at it? Yes.
Is that the number of seconds or minutes that we have in our life in a day?
Seconds in a day. 86,400 seconds in a day. My question to you is, what are you doing with that time? Are you consuming or are you creating? And it's okay to consume if you're consuming with your family and you're loving your family, because that's going to be consumption. But are you just watching TV for hours at a time and just consuming your time that way instead of putting your gifts that God has given you to work, to create service for others, to make this world a better place than when we found it, when we were born into it? Time and energy is what everybody has when they're born in this life. How you use your time and how you use your energy is a choice that you make every single day. It's a conscious choice. It's up to you if you want to use it to create or to consume. In conclusion, all I'll say is this to you. Focus on what you can do. on what you truly desire in your life. Have that compelling vision and purpose to get yourself up every single day. Ask yourself the hard questions. Am I happy? Do I want this? Do I want to make music my career, my second career? Let me give you a hard time. Am I going to be applying the law of reflection on a daily basis? I do it every day. I wake up at 5 in the morning. I know you just, you're like, no, I'm not doing that. It's called the Investor Reset Button, according to the Growth Masters, the Rod Harrison's Growth Masters, were the group I belong to. And you got to put on the mask on first before you can help others. It's the same thing I think of. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, I exercise, I meditate, I pray, and I journal 3 pages every day. Every single day, I apply the law of reflection. It's been crucial in my success. Stay accountable, guys. Find an accountability partner. Join one of my masterminds. Be one of the things that you can do. Find an accountability partner at church. Your spouse. Partner up. Stay true to it. Be the change you want in your life. Be that change. If I can do it, and I was the most stubborn person in the world, so can you. So can you. You can change at this stage. You be 70, 80, you can still change. It doesn't matter. Start today, because tomorrow never comes. I validate, I motivate, I encourage empowerment. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sylvia.